everyone. How are you doing? It is Kristi. I'm running a little bit behind, but I wanted to get on air and say hello to all of you. How are you doing this Sunday? It is Sunday. I am Kristi, and therefore it is time for Weekend Winters. Hello. All right. So before we get going, I just want to say hello to a few people in the chat who stopped by. Yeah, still set it up a little bit. So hello there. Oh, PZ, already back. Hey, you're in Wisconsin. Oh, all right. Well, good. I'm glad you're here now. Appreciate your time. Po Mama said hello. Rory Katz, Bruce. Always good to see you in the chat. You know how much I love it when you're able to make it to one of my shows. Who else I saw come out? That's Lucky Wanderer, Easy7, a bunch of people. Thank you for stopping by this morning. All right, so and also thank you for your patience. Michael Mistaken and A to Decay, DN Fan as well, I think, and Trans Gamer Girl. I think I got everyone who's commented now. So hello and happy Sunday. All right, so for today's show, we're going to continue on looking at King Crocoduck's article from Medium. What I've done is I've taken it into a Word document because I found out the reader I was using last time stops after 20 minutes of reading, and I don't want it to. And Word has a read aloud function. So let's back up a little bit and rewind to say what we were doing last time. So, yay. Hey, Bruce. Glad you're here. So Easy7 in my Discord, which I can put up a link later to the Discord. I should advertise that more. That's available because I'm really bad at Discord, but I'm trying. Someone brought to my attention that King Crocoduck on Medium had posted these articles where he tries to kind of do a bit of social commentary. It looks like faux social science, and I thought we'd take a look at it. But the problem was the one that they linked was actually like based on an earlier article, so we had to go back to the earlier article and start from the beginning. And last time I read through as much as we could get through without stopping every 2 seconds to go, that's not right. Before we start today, what I would like to do, actually I don't have to worry about my headphones for a little bit. What I'd like to do today is to start with explaining what a good piece of writing does, right? Because I feel like we've jumped in and we're looking at the micro level on the King Crocoduck stuff at this point, and it might make it easier. I think I'm clipping a bit, so I'm going to pull back my audio a little bit. I want to kind of take a bigger step back and really look at a bigger macro level as to what a piece of writing should do. The first thing a piece of writing should do is communicate something clearly. Whatever your goal is, you want to write something that people don't have to read 5 times in order to understand. So that immediately throws out a lot of Derrida. So for some people, they can write, they do write very complicated things that people pore over. I personally want to make sure that when I write something for other people, they can get it on the first read through. Even if they go back and read more and realize there was more there that they didn't understand because they hadn't got to the end yet. And my goal is on a first read through, you should basically understand what I'm saying. Right, so that is the goal. Now, what are some criteria that you can use to evaluate whether or not your piece of writing is any good? And this isn't my original idea. This comes from things I've experienced in being, trained to teach undergraduate and graduate students. But there are 4 simple questions you can ask yourself in order to evaluate whether or not a piece of your writing is doing its job, which is to communicate. 1, what is my question? If you can't succinctly summarize within 1 or 2 sentences the essence of your question, then you need to rethink how you're doing stuff. Okay. 2, what is my answer? Again, you need just a couple. You need to get pithy about this and be able. You don't have to justify. We'll get to the justifications and all the other stuff, right? So first is just understand your goal. Where are you getting to? What's your conclusion? What is the purpose of all this setup that you're doing in the top part of the essay to get to the answer at the end? So what is my question? What is my answer? 3rd is, why should you believe me? And you don't believe someone because you like them or they're attractive. I mean, you can, but then they're not really using rational, you're not using reasoning and empirics and being guided by reality. You're being guided by emotion. So when it comes down to why should you believe me, generally this is taken to be the methodological section, right? So how can you point to things in reality where you can cite this as a source to demonstrate an empirical link to what you're saying in the body of your work, right? Or studies that have been done that are reputable, or different perspectives, like in a theoretical framework, like the different perspectives that both people have, and how you're being transparent here in terms of your presentation. So why should you believe me? I mean, why should you is a question about the content and your own rigor. What is my question? What is my answer is about clarity. Why should you believe me is about being convincing. As is the fourth one. Why should you care? Why does this matter in terms of our understanding of a body of knowledge? Why does it matter in terms of a society's perspective at large? You can't just assume the reader is going to understand or sympathize or identify with the issue. They might not care about it, and yet you have to demonstrate why your contribution is relevant to people's lives, why you're making a step forward, why you're presenting something that people should connect to. So what is my question? What is my answer? Why should you believe me? Why should you care? That kind of is one way of thinking about your stepping stones as you work your way through the paper. But then you get to like the structure of your paper. And I don't read a lot of natural science. I read a lot of mathematical papers, and so I can't speak to that. But Croc is in my field now. This is not where we're talking about explaining formulas and listing them out and operationally defining every term in our formula and then going through some things, right? He's writing a piece about human beings, what they do, what they think, and what they say. Now, in this case, in social sciences and the humanities, I think it's generally accepted that you kind of lay that out in the introduction. Your introduction should be, what is my question, answer, why you should believe me, and why you should care. Point to it, at least, right? And then when you say, in this paper, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, after you say that, the next section should be X. And then there should be a connection between X and you setting up Y. Like you're going to link to Y, and then you go do Y. And then you explain the setup that links X and Y to Z. And then you write about Z, and then you get to the end of the paper, and you say, in this paper, I said I was going to do X, Y, and Z. In this paper, I did X, Y, and Z. And this is the conclusion we can draw when we synthesize all of the stuff having demonstrated X, Y, and Z. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them. Like, it's not that complicated. But it's hard to do well. I didn't want this to go over so long, but I also feel very passionate about good writing, and this is not good writing. Let's see. Oh, you guys are having a whole conversation in the chat. Should I get involved with this? I feel like I should just focus on this and move. So I'll let you guys have your own conversation there. If it's really important, tag me in. All right, and then I will see you. But I want to kind of catch us up to where the story so far, where we've gone thus far. All right, so one thing that I've reflected on in the time since the last reading of this is I wonder if, when he says this essay owes its existence to white fragility, without which my theory of woke fragility would have been impossible to formulate. I'm starting to wonder if what he's saying, what he's hinting at or pointing at here is that he's basically just ripped off this entire book and tried to do an inversion of it, but without the rigor, without the substantiation, without the studies. And maybe that's why it just comes across as an irrational screed. So, oh, hey, Shelley, good to see you. Good to see everyone. And let's see. Sorry, they're debating whether or not Roy Cat is a cat. Okay, that's what. No, you guys have fun in the chat. I love you. I love you all. I went through today, posted it into this review document, and kind of started to look at this at a more structural level. So in the opening paragraph, for instance, I'm pointing out his overgeneralizations lack citation. He just throws in these terms So we've got the running list is woke fragility, woke ideology, woke folk. I think that there are other woke things too, and he maybe tries to, and he makes up definitions for a couple of them, if you remember. So this thing about this essay owes its existence, initially, I mean, my impression was it should be in a footnote, unless, of course, he's just lazily tried to write an opposite day version of what this woman's work was, which I wouldn't put past him. But I haven't read it, so I don't know. I don't really care what Robin DiAngelo says. She has like one person on this topic. She's not the authority. All right, so we already went over this. He defines woke fragility as discomfort and defensiveness on the part of a woke person when confronted with information about racial inequality and injustice that isn't flattering to their worldview. The problem here is that he's already started, he's got woke folk undefined. He's got woke fragility undefined. He's got woke ideology undefined. He's got woke person undefined. And this means that these are empty categories. They're empty signifiers. They don't actually communicate information. They're just pointing at a category that the reader ends up filling in the information for themselves and creating meaning beyond that which the author has created, meaning they feel a deeper connection to these vague accusations or suppositions or fantasies because they take their own idea of what these words mean and they do that work for the author. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here. And therefore, a lot of this is just completely unconvincing. So what I got here, so this is so when he says his definition, we've already talked about how it's insufficient. There are also just like a lot of claims that could be looked at in terms of the psychological literature, but that would require rigor. So what he's got here is the woke fragility is a state in which an even minimal amount of empirical or analytic stress on a woke ideology becomes intolerable. So it doesn't even, it's not even internally coherent, right? Because it's woke fragility is a state a person has to have. And so when you're saying that there's stress on the ideology, you're not linking that to like the other person and it becomes intolerable, but this is not clear. And it's also not empirical. Like there are no tests. There are racial animus tests. Right? We, as psychologists, social psychologists have been studying racism and racist attitudes and discriminatory views and misogynistic views, gay, homophobic views for decades now. And the fact that he thinks he can just make up a definition shows that he's not a real scientist. A real scientist would apply rigorous conceptual limits regardless of the topic. And this is just like lazy propagandist stuff. So, all right, so I say in here, I just put a comment. His definition is blatantly misleading. If he had done, any research into the concept of fragility, you would see that this phrase, woke fragility, doesn't exist. Like, these are just words he's making up. And it's not like they're... And so there are concepts up here, like the fragility of the self. So this presentation raises the hypothesis that the self is a construction of the brain and extremely fragile. In order to support this statement, Professor Rubia provides 3 different sets of reasoning. Firstly, we are not born with the self. Rather, it is the result of development during childhood. So it's constructed. So we experience it related to our egos. Secondly, the self is subject to cultural influences. So the perception of self or to the own personality varies according to culture. This is not taken into account at all by Croc. And thirdly, the self is not indivisible, as shown by by epileptic patients with split brain operations and things like that. So the idea of fragility as a psychological concept exists, but did he make any effort at all to investigate whether there are studies on this? No. It's just lazy. Assumes woke folk don't do empiricism. Yeah, well, of course, he makes this here. There are so many empirical claims that he's made already that he can't justify. Woke folk, undefined, in Western institutions, undefined, operate in social environments that protect and insulate them from sources of empirical or analytical stress against woke ideology, citation needed. Also, definition for woke ideology. This state of ideological comfort is typically referred to as an echo chamber, no citation. So, we're seeing all this, and the thing where he goes on and on about this, section making just unsupported assertions like woke folks are from liberal arts colleges and they had a single quantitative course. And then he gets into this whole thing about like he tries to transition into the workplace, I think, but it's not at all clear. None of this goes to what he says he's going to do in the paper. And what he says he's going to do in the paper is to, where is it? He does say it at some point. He makes a comment like, in this paper, I'm going to outline, here we go, explain what woke fragility is, hasn't really done that. Outline some of its main properties, hasn't really done that, and develop the basic theory for how it functions. So cause and effect relationship to maintain and protect woke ideology. He hasn't done any of that really, at least not explicitly. So this whole front section is just ranting, whining. It's not setting anything up. It's not citing any sources. It's not defining its terms, for sure. It is a lot of whining, though. And all of the sort of demonized people that listed so far are people of color, and all the victims so far are white men. So I think it is important to mention here that a lot of this discussion and its animus toward people who criticize racism really basically is just setting up. It lacks the courage to say white folk or white people are the victims, but ultimately that's where all the coded language goes to. The origin, PZ writes, the origin of wokeness is a growing awareness of empirical reality that is ignored by cultural institutions. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's understanding that there is more than one narrative to history and to stories of what's going on. All right, so I went back through here. I've got all kinds of comments. You can see citations needed. This phrase is meaningless garbage. Seriously, he hasn't even made an effort to pretend this has a basis in reality. All right, so he's also making up these terms like the reduced psychosocial stamina that ideological insulation inculcates. I call this lack of stamina woke fragility. I just kind of feel that if I had read Robin DiAngelo, he's just stealing her work. Because there's this social stamina, when I look it up online, if I were to copy this, where's the copy? I think the only reference to it I could find when I looked it up was in White Fragility. So he's just lazily stealing someone else's work and inverting it, I think is the point. But he's not clear about that if that is what he's done. Okay, so we've gone through all this already. We know that a lot of it is emotional. It is not based in any studies. It's not based in psychological evidence. It's not based in any kind of statistics. And it sure as heck doesn't have clear definitions that other people could transport out and use precisely. I mean, the operationalization of these concepts is laughable. It really lacks any kind of serious rigor that you need in the social sciences to distinguish categories of groups. And that kind of work can be done if you read around in the discipline. But Croc wasn't actually interested in consulting psychology or empirical stuff. He was just doing his fifis and making things up. I just love this idea that like you could just come over here and make up your own definitions. And then people are just going to go, oh, yeah. Yeah, like you don't have any qualifications. You've done no research. This is not linked to anything in terms of the body of knowledge that already exists. But yeah, you go, Queen. Just like make up your definitions and we're all going to accept it. Yeah, science lives. Yeah. All right. So now in this section, I think we're actually going to get into a little bit more of the, what's the term I'm looking for here? Get a bit more. I have to open up my wavelength. I think I'm having some. Had a delay on where my audio is coming from. No, that should work. Okay, I wanted to do the read aloud function here, and so I wanted to make sure this was all going to work and be set up. So that should be headphones. We should be all set to go. Let's just see if this actually works. Okay, so we're going to get into now. I guess after about 500 words, he's going to try to start to address the thing he said he was going to do in the beginning. Those aren't his words on this screen right now. Those are mine. But at the moment, we are how many words? Okay, so this is 1,100 words. and it's none of this is dealing with the substance of what the paper said it was going to do. I think we're actually going to get to that now. So let's, okay, so oh God, all right, we have to go back a little bit. I use the term woke and wokeness. I'm just going to read this out and then we're going to start with the read aloud. But I use a term woke and wokeness to describe a social process. That that doesn't clarify anything, right? And radicalization into woke ideology is an emotional characterization. So I use the term woke and wokeness to describe a social process, okay? And this essay will focus on one aspect of wokeness and its effect, woke fragility. Okay, but I mean, if wokeness is a social process and that has multiple things, you can't just like assert that and not describe what... This is so bad. All right, so let me see if I can get this to read aloud without reading it aloud on my laptop. So we're going to start here with woke fragility and let it run. Oh, yeah. The only thing is I need to turn your sound on, y'all. How about that? I got it muted, desktop audio in case it bings or bangs or notifications come up, but this should work. 1,100 words economy is the best guide to clarity. Exactly, Bruce. Exactly. This is my point. Like, you only have so many words in an essay. You only have so much of your reader's time. And you have to think about your writing as a map that people can read. They don't figure, like, it's not a mystery novel, as my PhD supervisor told me, that you figure it out at the end. You tell them how it ends at the beginning. And then the whole point of the paper is to tell them how you got to that conclusion. It's not to, reveal it at the end. All right, so let's try this again with the read aloud. I think I have a British accent because I prefer those.
Woke fragility manifests when empirical and analytical stress is applied to woke ideology. These stresses can take a variety of forms and come from a range of sources, including Times suggesting that woke folks' viewpoint comes from social theories with insufficient empirical warrant.
Okay, sorry. The hypocrisy of him saying that people's viewpoints come from social theories with insufficient empirical warrant when he's literally made up everything that has preceded that statement, except for the Robin DiAngelo citation. I can't with the hypocrisy. Dude, you asserting that this is the case is not necessarily, doesn't mean that we should believe you. Like, why should we believe you? What have you presented here that should convince us that woke folks' point of view comes from social, that they get stressors when they're challenged to perceived expertise, deferred or otherwise? What is this based off of? And again, we still don't have a definition for woke folks. And we don't have a definition for woke ideology or a woke person. So these are all just empty signifiers meant to be filled by racists to plug it in. So this lacks sufficient empirical warrant. This statement lacks sufficient empirical warrant. I would say evidence. I'm not quite sure of the use warrant in this situation, but it might just be an aesthetic. All right. And so this whole idea, too, that people challenged perceived expertise. Well, you'd have to, if we're really going to do this exercise, all right, let's humor him. And we wanted to say that there were different categories of fragility in this case. Why is it, why are you focusing here on, warranted expertise and not for other people who react in the exact same way when their perceived expertise is challenged? Can I just do a little sidestep here? All right. I posted yesterday on Twitter in response to Bill Maher saying that, what do we have to have 4-year-olds thinking about sex? And my counter was fairy tales are filled with messages on sexual orientation. They always have been. They're flooded with them. They're just pervasive. They underpin sometimes the narrative of these fairy tales. And someone said to me, where is any evidence of sexual orientation in fairy tales? So I showed them pictures from Cinderella of kissing and Snow White of straight people kissing and Sleeping Beauty. And I just went through a Little Mermaid, right? And then went, you're kidding, right? I'm like, what do you think? Straight's not a sexual orientation? And then they're like, you're freaking out over kissing. I'm like, no, I'm not freaking out over kissing. I'm just saying you got to acknowledge that kids are being indoctrinated into heterosexuality. So if you're like, but the thing is, just admit you're a bigot and you're fine with that, but you don't want equal rights for other people, because then we can have a conversation about equal treatment under the law. And so this, a lot of people get upset when you challenge their long-held beliefs or their understanding of the world. It's not just the woke folks, which makes this really empty and just invalid as a descriptor of reality or a way to help us understand people in any meaningful way. This is just, people get upset when you challenge them. And it ain't different when you do it with people from different backgrounds. People, oh yes, all right, so I have a reader for this now.
People of color talking directly about their perspectives which contradict woke ideology, challenge to racial codes.
All right, so basically what he's saying here is that people of color who ally with white supremacists, who feed the white supremacist narrative, like Hitler would have been fine if he would have just kept to the borders of Germany, right? What he's saying is, somehow those people have a special, more pathological reaction to Candace Owens talking crap like that than, say, Candace Owens' reaction by asserting that Hitler was just trying to, make Germany great. So this is it. The problem with his definitions, it shows the inherent bias, is that it's not in multiple directions. And if you look at the psychology, there are metrics for white people's racial animus. We've measured this for a while. You know why? Because white people's racial animus has created an unfair society. White people's racial animus, and white men in particular, historically, but white women uphold the white supremacist patriarchy, believe me, have dehumanized people, denied them their legal rights, denied them their civil rights, denied them their basic dignity. So it makes no sense to demonize those people as if they're special and a category in this way, and that this isn't a normal human reaction when people feel oppressed. All right. Here we go.
People of color choosing not to protect the ideological feelings of woke folk in regard to race, challenge to woke racial expectations and need /entitlement to ideological comfort.
The irony again of him talking about the need for ideological comfort when he's literally just making up a world in his head. And this fantasy is being projected on other people rather than going out into the world and looking for evidence and then drawing conclusions based on that. The other thing I'll point out here, which I would if this is a peer review, A, this is entirely lacking in citations. And B, again, there's no serious discussion of examples of this and exploration of counterfactuals. In a peer review, people would say this is insufficient. You can't just you can just assert your opinion, but why should it? Nobody cares what you think, only what you can demonstrate. And the thing about lived experiences is that meets the criteria in a way that Croc's opinion here doesn't. All right, let's keep going on. So all of these, again, lack credibility. They fall down on the why you should believe me and why you should care, but especially on the why you should believe me. He's not talking from his experience about people of color talking about their perspectives because he's not a person of color. He's a white person judging the reactions of white people judging the reactions of people of color without asking them why. He's just imputing motives on them. He's imputing the emotional process. And he's not even citing any psychological studies. Garbage. Okay, so and again, he's acting here as if people who are people of color, and also here, people of color choosing not to protect the ideological feelings of woke folk undefined. Again, this is, I think, all coded stuff to basically defend people like Andy Ngo and Candace Owens in being allies and collaborators with white supremacist patriarchy, but it's still conceptually all over the place. All right.
Times fellow woke folk not providing agreement with one's interpretations.
These are literally the same points over and over again. We're talking about contradict, choose not to protect, not providing agreement. So all of these are really just what you're saying is people don't like it when other people challenge their worldviews. That is not exclusive to people on the left, as evidenced by this article. So these are all these aren't good examples because they're not conceptually disambiguated enough to be individual points. These are just a list he came up with. And then he didn't actually even give examples of the things on his list, so we can't link this to anything in the real world to map it on to know if we are understanding what he's thinking of.
Receiving feedback that one's behavior had a racist impact on white people, challenge to woke radicalism and its attempts to redefine racism.
Wow. What's woke radicalism? Again, undefined. He just keeps throwing around a bunch of terms as if everyone is supposed to know what these mean or these are accepted social psychological terms. They're just not. He's making this up. He's making all of this up, which is why he can't link it to things in the empirical world. Receiving feedback that one's behavior had a racist impact on white people. So this is all basically like white fragility. All of this is evidence of his white fragility, if I'm honest. All of this is in one direction. There's no exploration of the counterfactuals. There's no reference to the fact that human beings just have reactions of, when something that we have an understanding of is attacked, our first reaction is usually to become defensive, and that it's actually something you have to train yourself out of and learn to be more open and hold on to things more loosely. But okay, I'm getting off track. I'm going to get going.
Suggesting that group membership isn't as significant as woke folk make it out to be. Challenge to collectivism.
Collectivism, undefined. Suggesting that group membership isn't as significant as woke folk make it out to be. Basically, what he's trying to say here is that the fact that you're a protected class because for centuries, I think, right? He doesn't give examples. He's not clear. So we don't know because he's a poor writer. But what I think here is he's basically saying the fact that you were the victims of racial discrimination for centuries, that you were deprived of your wealth, that you were deprived of your lands, that we split up your families, that we sold off your kids and pocketed the money, really is irrelevant these days. Okay, you're 400 years behind in your economic acquisition of wealth. Deal with it. This whole list comes from a place of angry white male privilege being encroached upon. There's so many hurt feelings in here. All right, I'm going to go through. Okay. Oh God, he's got more. He's got I can't believe. Look at this. Look at this. All right. So far we had over 1,000 words of him just babbling on and not being very precise. And then when he actually does go into a list of things, he tries to be precise about something. One, they're not original concepts, and they go on forever. How many words? When he spends 195 words on this list without citation, without categorization of any meaningful kind. It's not like he said, okay, there are 3 overarching categories of this. He just writes out this list and it looks like he made them up there's no order here. They don't link to one another. They don't have any empirical basis. It's just a list of whining. I think it's just a list of whining.
An acknowledgement that unequal access between racial groups isn't necessarily, or even exclusively, the result of external...
I think, okay, here's my suspicion. This is a list of all the arguments where people of color have smashed him into the ground and called him out on his BS. I mean, literally, this is all based... Look at what this is. It's all about interactions. It's about people of color talking directly about, it's the existence of Candace Owens. It's white people telling them that things aren't really as bad as as you make it out to be, right? Undermining, gaslighting them, telling them that they're the problem with racism, not the actual institutional racism. Suggesting group membership, like, yeah, isn't it significant? Yeah, it's wonderful when a privileged white man who has built his career on a family wealth that goes back into that its roots come from stealing and theft from Native peoples. His entire life has been lived in privilege because of his group membership, and yet you're gonna sit here and white mansplain from your position of unearned privilege, and let's face it, getting way farther ahead than you should have based on what you can demonstrate you've merited. Right? There's no empirical rigor here. There's no attempt to be scientific. There's no attempt here to be like intellectually coherent throughout this piece and define the terms and use them consistently. This is just what people have argued, or what Croc has argued with people online about. All right, I'm going to get through these, otherwise we're never going to end because it's almost already 1:45.
Suggesting that group membership isn't as significant as woke folk make it out to be. Challenge to collectivism. Times an acknowledgement that unequal access between racial groups isn't necessarily, or even exclusively,
it's your
the result
fault.
of external factors such as discrimination. Challenge to reductive tendencies toward institutional explanations. Times being presented
agency.
with a political dissident in a position of leadership. Challenge to woke authority.
This is his nod to Trump, I think. An oblique reference. Like, being presented with a political dissident in a position of leadership, challenge to... Yeah, I don't know. Again, this is so many dog whistles here. There's so many racist dog whistles going on. Am I flashing? Am I flickering? Is that a problem on my screen? Okay, I'm just having a look at that. Okay.
Times being presented with information about competing ideologies and theories. For example...
Sorry, I flicker when I read, don't I? When it's on, when the thing is on. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just kind of like, I don't want that flickering to be distracting, so I'm gonna. Do I have a no camera? I think I have a no camera version. Oh, that's, yeah. That's definitely with a camera. Right. None of these are good. All right, let me just go ahead and, yeah, I'll take that off for a second while we do this, just to get through it. Oh, go ahead and read it now.
Times being presented with information about competing ideologies and theories, for example, works of art and literature in which political dissidents critique woke ideology, challenge to woke centrality.
It's hilarious to me. Challenge to woke centrality. This coming from like a cultural background where white men are like 95% at centered in art. And as soon as you get a woman or a person of color or a woman of color in those roles, a bunch of right-wing men fall over like they're having a heart attack. Like, just look at The Quartering as an example of that kind of fragility. So you're gonna, like, again, this idea that there is any woke centrality at all is completely delusional. All right, so I think we're actually going to get into some unsupported things in the psychological section, but let's go ahead and finish off this one. And then maybe I can put my camera back on for a second.
In an environment dominated by woke folk, each of these challenges becomes exceptional.
What? What? Anyone? I think I would do this so that I turn it on and off. Huh? Anyone understand what this even means? In an environment dominated by woke folks, each of these challenges becomes exceptional. Is he saying that if you have... And woke folk, again, which he's never defined, but I think is a dog whistle for people of color and their white allies. What you're basically saying, in an environment dominated by non-collaborating people of color, these things are unique and exceptional and challenging, exceptional challenges. Again, no link to reality. I don't even know what this is supposed to mean. What does it mean to become exceptional? Does that mean like when people of color have like equal amounts of representation in a space, suddenly you can't bully them anymore and you have to like deal with them as people? I don't know what this means. All right, back to reading without my picture so I don't flicker. Come on, go.
In turn, woke folk are often at a loss for how to respond in constructive ways.
What? What? Seriously? What? I don't, like, citation needed. This is delusional fantasy. Seriously. Like, this, none of this has a basis in reality. Okay, I'm going to read some of your comments now because we are getting near the end of the hour and I want to make sure I get some of your points in. Oh, no, that's fine. I'll leave that there. That's good. Okay. Hey, Bruce, don't worry about shaking. We know that you've got, we appreciate your time and your effort here. So let's see. Okay, you're talking about Disney princesses. Peasy writes, they don't recognize that individualism is built on a foundation of collectivism. Yes. Yes. You can't have rugged individualism without a society underpinning it that supports your individualism. I mean, if otherwise, like, look at the Donner Party. That's what happens when you don't have collectivism and you end up in trouble. Your rugged individualism ends up in cannibalism. All right. The mythologizing of the founding fathers, absolutely. Lots of those verbose, sophisticated language, but very little meaningful substance. Yeah, this is it. Like, he's using all the rhetoric, but he doesn't seem to use it in a way that makes things clearer. He uses it in a way that obfuscates. And that comes down fundamentally to a lack of clear definitions that he maps into the empirical world. He's not talking about real people. He's talking about straw men he's created in his head. He's talking about the fantasy world that exists between his ears. And that's why he's having no luck. It's why he can't empirically substantiate these psychological states are somehow unique to woke people, which again makes me think that this is just a ripoff of white fragility, a lazy attempt to do an inversion of something that isn't properly inverted. It's not one-to-one when you flip the oppressors, the critique of oppressors to the, a look at the oppressed. Let's see. Fake Queen Corey. Yes. Bruce. AFK, no worries. Peasy, every good sociological and anthropological paper I've read looks at diverse societies as a point of comparison. Absolutely. Yeah, you have to, empirically, like a counterfactual, right? You want to look at, when you get a descriptive statistic of a poll, you don't just get, one group. And they're what answers. You get, Democrats, Republicans, independents, or you get, men, women, 18 to 24, 25 to 34, whatever else. Information on its own. So, for instance, is pointless. One of the critiques of the study of, the gender gap is that they'll write an article that goes, women are 48% 48% of women still vote for a candidate because they think he's hot. But they don't say what men replied in those categories. And again, we're just doing a very basic, and crude gender binary in an aggregate for, because of how statistical surveys work. So I'm just talking in a crude, false gender binary. But you don't, if you know one information on one group, it's meaningless without the context of someone else. Let's see. Fake Queen Corey says, I think that's still with regards to POC challenging woke people. PZ says, I think he's claiming it's rare for woke folk to challenge their own assumptions. Yeah, because, he's reading minds again. Paul writes, the lack of referencing mean he has created a shopping list of whinging about stuff? You're not wrong. You are not wrong. Neo Ripshaft writes, I found some woke folk on my snipe on the other day. Tara writes, hi, all forgot what time it was and got caught. Hey, welcome up. Got caught up in Jose's new video. Nice. Put a link to that. I don't know if you can put a link to that because you're not a mod, but yeah, if you have a title for that, go ahead and put that in the chat. All right, I think that's pretty much everyone. KDC definitely seems to fancy himself as a new Alan Skull. Sure. And it's the Pornhub style of statistical PC. Stop being so funny on my show. Stop being so witty and charming. You're stealing my limelight. Okay, so we're going to, in the last 10 minutes of this, because you can tell how long it takes to get through it, we are going to, look at this lack of referencing. Okay, so after over 1,000 words of not getting to the point that he said he was going to do in the paper, we're finally going to get to something that is a little bit closer. So we're going to do this section on ideological isolation, I'm going to try really hard not to stop it. And then why don't we pick this up here next week? I'm just going to say 2. I love doing this kind of stuff. It's so much easier to do this kind of show than I don't mind doing the other one, y'all. But when I do the one on the social sciences, I have to like read through the section and highlight all the points I'm going to make. Then I have to write the lecture notes. And then I have to give the lecture. And I usually do all of that on Sunday morning. I usually prepare everything within like 3 hours before airtime and then the 1 hour to air. And it's a way more cognitive work than this is. So this is a nice little break from our serious, rigorous, academic, empirically grounded, reference-sourced, and cited actual social studies or social science book. Okay, let's go. The skull hoax, off the top of my head, I don't, but we can, I don't know if that's about anthropology with the skulls or something else, or if it's an article. Off the top of my head, I don't know I don't recognize the name. So, but let's keep going on this, and then we'll wrap it up for today.
Ideological isolation. The first factor leading to woke fragility is the ideologically isolated.
I forgot that I'm flickering again. So let me just turn that off. Okay. Go again.
Is the ideologically isolated lives which most woke folk lead. Even if woke folk live in close proximity to political dissidents, ideological isolation happens at both the representational and the informational levels.
All right, I tried, y'all. I tried, but okay, so is this political geography? Is he saying that ideologically insulated live in close proximity to? I don't understand how he's linking up. I mean, ideological isolation is a psychological state, but he's talking about it in living in close proximity to dissidents. What? This makes no sense to me. I have no idea what this is meant to mean. Okay, continue. Go on. Camera off.
That is to say, both the constituencies of woke folks' social groups and the art and news that they consume are likely to be predominantly, if not exclusively, of an ideological bent that reinforces, rather than challenges, their wokeness.
What? I can't get through this. I'm sorry. This is nonsense. What? So now he's talking about media consumption? And not only is he talking about media consumption, he's asserting to understand that people in this undefined woke folks, still undefined woke folks, social groups, all of their art and news are ideologically bent that reinforces. Like, where do you see woke? Like, do you see wokeness on Bloomberg? You know, financial news. Do you see wokeness on Fox? Do you see wokeness on, like the evening news? No. Unless, of course, you just think acknowledging the humanity of people of color is wokeness. I don't know what? What? Oh God, no, okay, it gets worse. I just saw the next line. I just said, now he's going to basically say they're uneducated and they watch the wrong media. This is so racist. I didn't realize how freaking racist, openly racist. Okay. I'll let Croco, racism here really speak for itself. So let's just go.
They receive little or no authentic information about the empirical and analytical challenges to their ideology and are thus unprepared to think about it critically or with complexity.
Wow. Based on the analysis I've seen, I'll bring my camera on, what that actually describes is Fox News viewers. This is why you can't link any empirical data. This is just rough. When it comes to like sources of information and getting basic facts about the world wrong, That is the territory of Fox News viewers. That is like the white and their allies, or their collaborators, I should say. Far right echo chamber. What I'm seeing in Croc's piece of Croc here is not an empirically based argument. I'm seeing basically the projection of the insecurities of a right-wing white guy saying, I know you are, but what am I? Am I alone in this? Is this the I know you are, but what am I essay here? Okay. Right. I tried to get through this, y'all. I can't. It's just so garbage. It's just such fantasist ramblings and whining and projection and lack of coherency. I mean, again, we're not getting any closer. I'm going to just end on this, because we've now read a lot of this, right? We're probably like through a good quarter of it at this point. And even if I added a couple words, right? But here is the question. At this point, do we understand what woke fragility is? Does anyone have a clear, understandable source definition of discomfort and defensiveness on the part of a woke person undefined when confronted with information about racial inequality and injustice that isn't flattering to their worldview? Well, there is a whole lot here that needs to be unpacked and demonstrated. Right? What is flattering? What is a worldview? What constitutes information? How are you defining racial inequality and injustice? How are you measuring defensiveness on the part of a woke person? And is it in any way different from the defensiveness with other people? Or why should we have this category? Like, where is it? So, all right. So, no. Do we have some of its main properties? No. Are we any closer to understanding a basic theory? Now, theory here means a causal relationship, a causal mechanism. Well, no, I don't know what it means here, but what it should mean is a specified causal mechanism that links like a series of things to an outcome, a series of causes to an outcome, and develop the basic theory for how it functions to maintain and protect woke ideology. Nothing at this point. I mean, other than the fact that he's defined one term, he kind of hints that woke folk are graduates of liberal arts colleges. I don't know. I don't have a good idea for any of this stuff yet. All right. Yes, well, it's okay, Rory Katz, that you have to run. I'm going to be wrapping this up myself here. So we're going to just keep going on this. As far as I'm concerned, we're going to eat on this essay for as long as it takes to get through these two pieces. And, I get now why he and James Lindsay get on. Because neither of them lack the humility to think that they might not understand something just by reading it and interpreting it themselves, like by referencing their own world, like their little navel-gazing thing. James Lindsay does this too. He reads something through a lens and then he thinks he understands it when he's actually misunderstood it because he hasn't done enough work to get where the scholarship has brought us. All right, so I'm going to read last comments. I'm going to read, let's just go to camera. Oh, I'm so big. Look at how big I am. I'm super big today. There we go. Yeah. All right, I'm going to read your comments even though you can't see them, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Okay, let's see. Woke fragility, Michael Mistaken writes, is used by King Crocoduck. I am out of touch. No, it's the woke kids who are wrong. Yeah, old man yells at clouds. The anti-yoke folks. I see you, Egg Shelly. All right. Easy 7. Woke fragility. When woke people get shown that systemic racism not real. Yes. All right, PC, good to see you. She's going to end up in your room. Have a great Sunday with your family. And I appreciate you stopping by. And Bruce, too. I always like it when Bruce is able to stop by. So Bruce writes, is it possibly better understood as propaganda, not discussion? Yes. I mean, when you get through this, this really is propaganda, if you want to say by the definitions of propaganda. This isn't scholarship. It's not linked to reality. This is just someone crapping on other people because he doesn't like them. And they make him feel uncomfortable. The lack of sort of self-reflection on how he's describing himself and his own reactions in all of this is interesting psychologically as well. Posted the wiki article of the Sokol hoax in the Discord. Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. You meant have the humility. I said lack the humility. Oh, yeah, probably. Yes. Okay, thanks. Sometimes I'm riffing and I'm reading and I'm thinking. Thank you for hearing what I meant and not what I said. Okay. Yes. This is it for today. Thank you all for stopping by. I appreciate your time and attention. I hope you're enjoying this. I know I am. Like I said, it's way easier to explain how something doesn't come up to standard than to like live by my own standards. It's way harder to be rigorous than it is to point out a lack of rigor. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. Please come back next week. We'll finish this up. I've got D&D going on the Rolling Left channel on Twitch, and I will actually be with Kevin, I think, on Monday night for a happy hour, because I want to call out Sydney Watson and Ariel Scar blah 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 and Blair White on some crap. Some transphobic crap. So we're gonna maybe meet up on Monday night for that. So until then, though, all that's left to be said is that I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Have a wonderful Sunday. Stay safe. Stay happy, stay healthy. I wish you all the best. And, yes. I've been Kristi, you've been awesome. Have a great rest of your day. I think that's what I was going to say. All right. Catch y'all later.